I've got a factory instrument here from the drum kits, and I've got a little beat programmed up, and I want to explore some of the routing and signal flow options in Kontakt in this video. Now, there are lots of complex and sophisticated internal routing possibilities we can send to instrument buses. We have insert effects at the group level, at the send level, at the bus level, and even at the output level. We can also take advantage of multiple output routing to arrive at individual channel strips within our DAW. And that's what I want to start with, kind of the simplest format of taking advantage of the internal routing. We're going to bypass all the internal signal flow and go straight to multiple outputs. So I'm going to start by showing the outputs, and I'm going to go here at the top and show the outputs. And this is kind of a stock configuration, but it's not what I want to use for this. Now, I've got an instance of Kontakt called up in my DAW, in this case, Logic Pro X, and I've called up the instance that has 16 mono outputs. We're not going to need all of that, but that's what I have called up. And I'll play you this simple little pattern that I have. Okay, so there's just 4 drum sounds happening, and they're all arriving at the stereo 1-2 output. And I want to separate them all onto mono outputs. So first thing I'm going to do is generate some additional subchannels here in my DAW. And this will vary from DAW to DAW, but that's how you do it here in this specific program. And I can send to these direct outputs from anywhere in the signal flow, and I'm going to do it at the group level. So all of these sounds, this is pre-mapped in the factory library. They're all mapped to individual groups. You can see here, all these sounds have their own groups. So I'm going to start by taking the first sound, the bass drum. Let's solo the group so we can hear just that sound. So what I'm going to do is go now into the source module and the group insert effects. So here I can insert processing to affect this specific group, the bass drum. Of course, we can process it however we want, and I'll leave the standard processing here. And these group insert effects can come either before or after the actual amplifier module, meaning the volume and pan. And we can determine which of these are post or pre the amp effects with the number of slots here. So by default, the last 2 are post amplifier and the rest are pre, but we can change it just by adding or removing from there. And you'll notice that in the last slot is something called sends, and this is usually what's there by default. I'll just take it out and you can see it's at the bottom of the effects menu. And this allows us to send or route part of the signal to some global effects, which I don't want to look at right now, but that's how you do it. And you click on these and you'll get the parameters for each of these plugins. So let's close this up. And what I want to do right now is the actual output of the amplifier stage. I want to route this to individual outputs so that it'll arrive on my DAW uniquely. So I'm going to click here in the field, and I have these internal buses, which again, I don't want to look at the moment, but I want to go straight to the output section. And all we've got are stereo 1, stereo 2, and some surround channels, which is the default. So we need to configure this first of all. I'm going to click this plus button here, and I want to configure, I'll go 6, I can go 8, I can go 4. I only need 4 for now, but let's go to 8. And I want mono, so I'm going to go 1 channel. I want to generate 8 mono output channel strips here. And I'm going to delete existing channels before creating new ones so that things will be more clear here. So let me click OK. And there we have our mono 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then there are 4 auxes, which can act as the return for these sends. But again, I don't want to look at that right now. I'm just going straight from the output of the amplifier section directly to the outputs that'll connect into my DAW. So let's start naming these. I'm going to skip the first one just for reasons that have to do with my DAW because that's used by the first channel strip, which I want to avoid. And I'll call this kick. And then I can call the next one snare. And I can call the next one click. And then the next one shaker. So now that that's done, we'll see in the list here, again, I have my bass drum selected. I now have these available here. So I'm going to route this to kick and then repeat for the other groups. But first we need to connect all of these individual outputs to arrive in my DAW at the individual subchannels. So we need to go to the output field here. And here I'm going to connect the first one. I'll click here and select stereo 1, the first half of the first stereo channel. I go to the next one, which I've named kick, and I'll put that at stereo 1, 2. The next one, let's go to stereo 2, 1. I'm just going sequentially here. And then the next one, these are just the default names. surround 511, and then surround the second channel, surround 3, surround 4. And I'll click OK, and there we'll see they're all assigned properly. So now when I hit play, we should see and hear the bass drum arriving at this second strip here instead of the default one, which is the first, and arriving at this aux over here. That's great. And all the other signal arriving here are the other groups that are being triggered. So let's go to the next sound. Okay, so the next one will be the snare over here. So instead of arriving at the default over here, I'm going to click again in the amplifier output field for this group, and I'll send this to snare, and it should now arrive here. Good. Let's go to the next one. Here's the click over here. Same thing, output field. Route this to the one that I've named click, and it should arrive here. And the last one in this pattern is shaker, and that will go to the one that I've named shaker. And we should have them all arriving at the individual outputs here. So that's a way of getting some direct output routing in Kontakt from the groups and amplifier section straight to the outputs. I'm going to end off here, and in the next video, we'll explore some of the internal routing in Kontakt in a little more detail.